too. So why are we here? Like, why is there this big movement to go plant-based? Okay, and there's a couple reasons. People want cleaner food with less pesticides and organic food and things like that, less heavy metals. But I think what it really comes to, where my passion for nutrition and health stems from, is right here. Okay, this is in the United States some of the leading causes of death. Heart disease is the most. It actually kills more people than 3 through 7 combined. That's what this is right here. The only thing that's close is cancer. It's a close second. And then you have things like stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, hypertension's even up there. I didn't include that one. And then worldwide, heart disease is still number 1, but stroke is number 2. So for some reason, our rates of cancer here are a little bit higher than the rest of the world. But the rest of the world, the stroke rates are a little bit higher. These preventable chronic diseases are killing too many people. And Maddie and I believe that with good nutritional habits, we can significantly lower risk of these issues. Okay? And then just some facts down here. I'm sorry if you can't see, but the risk of dying of heart disease, about 1 in 4. About 50% of people in America will come down with type 2 diabetes. You do not want that. About 60% of Americans will come down with some sort of chronic disease. Okay, 1 in 8 women breast cancer, 1 in 9 men prostate cancer. Outside of skin cancer, breast cancer is the most common in women. Prostate is the most common in men. So we have this one up here because this will tell you. So what a vegetarian does is they just cut out meat. See how the line across it? That's all a vegetarian's going to do, which is great. That's awesome. But however, sometimes, depending on how strict and healthy of a vegetarian they want to be, they'll still leave in things like junk food, certainly eggs and forms of dairy, right? So what a vegan plant-based starter does is just cut out really 2 more food groups. We also take away junk food because hopefully they're just being healthy. But they then go 2 steps further and cut out eggs and dairy. So within that, sort of in between those 2, you have people that say, well, I'm going to cut out meat, but I'm going to eat fish, and those are pescatarian. Well, I'm going to cut out meat and dairy, but I'm going to have eggs, okay, a lacto-vegetarian. And so on and so forth. Ovo-vegetarian, I think is another one with the people that have eggs. So those are sort of the differences. And I remember growing up, I didn't even know what a vegetarian was. I remember I was so ignorant as a 15, 16, 17-year-old, and I didn't know that. And I think many people don't. And if they know what a vegetarian is, they go, well, what's a vegan? Gosh. So these are the differences. What we tried to do with the next slide, if you want to click over, is just kind of showcase, just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're healthy. There's a lot of unhealthy vegans. You would actually be much better off eating good forms of meat and eggs and dairy than having sort of this junk food, okay, I believe. And then if you go one more, what we tried to do was, most people are like, well, what is a grain? Like, what is a whole grain? These are just examples of whole grains. Imagine, which one of these do you use the most, probably? Or what are some of your favorites?
I would say out of all of them, probably quinoa and oatmeal the most.
Quinoa and oatmeal? Awesome, yeah. And she had mentioned the gluten sensitivity, okay? That's kind of that's a strange thing. We could maybe do a whole lecture about that. And if anybody has gluten issues, please save them. I'd love to talk about it. I can talk your ears off about that. But as long as you're getting whole grains, like these foods come with a variety of nutrients. In any health text right now, with the exception of maybe somebody who's advocating for a paleo diet, any serious health text that I would be given to read and be tested on would advocate strongly for whole grains. There's not one on the planet that wouldn't. So, and then if you go next, like a lot of people don't even really know what legumes are, and these are just some of the legumes. So we wanted to share some of those. And I think here, and I'm just going to switch shots with you now. You can hold on to that. This is really, really cool. Okay, this is so exciting, and this is recent. This was an add-on from last time. Okay, so the bottom left, and I know you can't see it, but this is the United States is like my plate. Okay, this is what we recommend all 385 million Americans eat. Okay, and you have like fruits and veggies and grains, and you have like a lean protein portion of the plate. And then the top right is like a glass of milk, a dairy, right? We got to get our calcium in. And so, what Canada has done is this past year they totally revamped their version of the My Plate, and they made it plant-based. Okay, this is incredible. And what they did is the whole left side is all fruits and vegetables, okay? Bottom right are those whole grains that we talked about, buckwheat, quinoa, brown rice. And then top right is, they just say mostly plant-based proteins, okay? So that's gonna be things mostly like legumes, okay? And they probably say mostly because they got lobbied like no other from animal agriculture and things like that. But they're essentially saying like, yeah, and this is why it's so important is because this is a country, this is a government agency saying, okay, the research has shown enough for us to recommend our entire population eat this way. Okay, this is huge, 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 right? Cool. So we're going to go into the benefits of a plant-based diet, but before we do, just a couple of clips to show you like how we're progressing and how this thing is becoming more popular. We have a hospital, this is down in South Florida, I want to say West Palm Beach. They're giving their patients who are recovering from surgery or illness there, they're offering plant-based items like in their kitchen and what they're serving. Okay, so they're serving patients plant-based, and the director of these hospitals are saying, yeah, like we know that the best way to recover essentially is with a plant-based diet, so we're going to start giving our patients that. Really, really cool. And I think we all know and all have seen that there's been more plant-based or vegetarian, vegan options at fast food places, okay? That doesn't mean those things are healthy. However, it just means that this sort of movement is gaining traction, okay? It's becoming more popular. So, all right. So when we're talking about benefits, there's three main types of benefits, okay? Obviously there's a health benefit we're going to get into, there's an environmental benefit, and there's obviously the benefit of not killing animals, right? Or aiding or contributing to their suffering. Even if you don't consume chicken, if you're having eggs, it does make the chicken suffer in some way, depending on how they're treated. So let's look at some of the health benefits first. Was called the China study, okay? And these researchers went over to China in the 70s and they looked at rural China, okay? They didn't go to like Beijing and Shanghai and things like that, Hong Kong. But they went into all these rural countries. They looked at thousands of people, different little villages and things like that, little towns. And what they found after years and years of looking at this and analyzing this data is that people who were mostly plant-based were like devoid of disease. Okay, people that didn't even eat, they weren't getting sick, they weren't having strokes and heart attacks and cancer and things like that. So these authors, after looking at so many people, it's like, wow, okay, if you're Chinese and you go plant-based, your risk of getting a disease seems to be very low. The American Journal of Cardiology, substantially lower risk of heart disease. Protein from animal sources, which we know for sure associated with a higher mortality rate. So those who consume more plant-based or more plant-based protein have a lower mortality rate. Okay, those who consume more animal protein, higher mortality rate. We know that for sure. There are many, many studies that show that association. This is a cool one because it's a meta-analysis. Okay, see top left up here. Meta-analysis means these authors didn't do any research. They just took all the research done before them, analyzed it. Sometimes it's 1,000 studies, sometimes it's 20 studies. I'm not sure about this one. But they essentially looked at the effects of a vegan and vegetarian diet on health, and looking at all the data, this is what they extrapolated. Lower rates of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity. Okay, that's pretty cool. Another thing, just looking at, again, same thing, protection for obesity, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, all of these chronic disease sort of things, and some of the risk factors for chronic disease, hypertension and diabetes. This one's really important, the effect of a plant-based diet on plasma lipids, okay? Plasma lipids are HDL, LDL, VDL, these you think they're cholesterol, they're cholesterol carriers, right? So what happened was plant-based diet reduced their total and LDL cholesterol. Very important, and I will share why it's very important. If you have a low LDL, your risk of heart disease, which is the #1 killer, drops significantly, okay? A high LDL and total cholesterol are what causes heart disease from a nutritional perspective. So if you can lower that, you are lowering your greatest risk of death, which is heart disease, okay? Pretty cool. That's profound. Okay, what do we got next? This is from the author of Forks Over Knives, that first documentary, Dr. Esselstyn, and he's just essentially advocating for the same thing, saying that any heart disease patient, their first sort of line of treatment, if you have risk factors for heart disease, should be a plant-based diet, not medication and whatnot. And then he goes on to say that cultures that do not eat meat, or mostly plant-based, are essentially devoid of disease. It's kind of the same thing that the doctors from the China study found, okay? Plant-based diet and gut health. This is one we could do a whole lecture on. So gut health is this new sort of thing, right? Like the microbiome, and I gotta have good gut health, and I gotta take probiotics and drink kombucha and all that stuff. I wanted to share, I went to a conference last month, and it was a nutrition and fitness related conference, and one of the lectures that I went to was this PhD, I think she was at Purdue or Pittsburgh, it was at some P university in the Midwest. But she was talking about gut health. Her specialty was the microbiome and gut health, and she was brilliant. She could name off bacteria that I couldn't even pronounce, and she knew them like that. But this is sort of highlighting that whole lecture. I'm going to make it really, really easy for you, okay? So when we talk about your gut, what is the gut? Okay, you have a long tube that's outside of your body, actually, okay? It starts in your mouth, it goes down your esophagus, into your stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and out of your colon. It's this long tube that we put all of our food and drink in, and it seeps out, right? And we get the nutrients from that. And we actually get the bad stuff too, heavy metals and pesticides and things like that, unfortunately. But what we know is that there's this like ecosystem of microbes in there, okay? Trillions, in fact. There's more microbes in our body in the tract than we have cells, okay? It's actually a 1.2 to 1 ratio, okay? So we have this ecosystem of bacteria and microbes. And what we found, or what they found, I should say, not me, I didn't have anything to do with research, is that they have this profound effect on our health and our personality and our decision making, okay? And it makes sense because you have all these organisms and they are a part of you, right? And what they've shown is that if you take the microbiome, they've extracted parts of the microbiome of a healthy person, let's say someone with type 2 diabetes, and then compared that to a healthy person without type 2 diabetes, non-healthy and healthy, they have two very different microbiomes, okay? The ratio of certain bacteria and the kinds of certain bacteria are different, right? So we don't know if the bad or altered ratio of bacteria is causing the disease or the disease is causing the change in the microbiome. But we do know, and we're going to learn more as the years go on because this is fairly new, that the microbiome is very important for health. Okay, we need to optimize that. And a plant-based diet is a very good way to optimize your microbiome and have a healthy gut microbiome, okay? So some of the things that I wanted to share from this talk is that the foods that most help your gut microbiome are foods that are high in fiber, okay? Fiber is this undigestible carbohydrate that's found only in plant-based foods. It is 100% not included in animal products. You cannot find fiber in dairy, you cannot find it in eggs or animal protein. And that's the best food for the bacteria. It's the best way to get a healthy gut microbiome. So the sort of 4 or 5 top foods that this PhD from Purdue or Pittsburgh said were whole grains, okay, things like whole wheat, quinoa, buckwheat, stuff like that. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, berries, things like blueberries, grapes, and that included red wine, actually. I didn't want to do it there, but red wine was looped in there too, so red wine every now and then is pretty good. And then cooking with garlic and onion, which are what we call prebiotic foods, okay? That's sort of like, those are the landscapers and the feeders of your microbiome, okay? So